Welcome back to the Quarries podcast. I'm Warren Major, and today I'm delighted to have Brandon Ashplant with me, local filmmaker, to talk about his latest film. So, Brandon, hello.
Hello. Hi. Good to be with you.
I guess kick off your latest film. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah.
Where you came up with the idea and what you've done with it?
Absolutely. So written and directed and co-produced a local Guernsey financed and produced short film titled Whispers of Freedom. It's based on the tragic true story of Chris Gueffroy, a young East German who markedly made a sad entered a sad statement into the history books by becoming the last person to attempt an escape across the infamous Berlin Wall and through the death strip. It's based on that true story. We shot the film, 90% of it was shot here on Ireland, recreating elements of the Berlin Wall and the death strip and other parts of kind of wider East German society, and then shot about sort of the remaining 10% in between largely Berlin, but a little bit in London as well.
So how did you come up with the story before? How did you find it, and also having found it, make that into the point where you got making it into a film?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think from my side, it was kind of coming at it from, so at school, don't want to sort of go right back when, but back at school, I wasn't too interested in history, sort of thought of it as a bit boring, that type of stuff. And only in sort of coming into my sort of mid-20s, I sort of really got an irk or an inkling for some reason to sort of pick up history books and read. Primarily modern history, so 20th century history, so World War I, World War II, and into the Cold War, but also ancient history. So without boring you into in the on the weeds detail, I was kind of fascinated by history because obviously it sort of, especially that 20th century side, it sort of feeds into so much of the world we see today. Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, everything is sort of shaped and sort of built on that sort of those 20th century foundations, and there's no dividing line that you can sort of decipher between then and now. It sort of blurs, doesn't it? So that I came at it from that angle and sort of came into the sort of Cold War side. And I think so I was born in the 90s, and my generation I think were kind of, or are slightly, maybe less clued up on that period of time. People very much know about World War II, and then it sort of jumps up to kind of almost weirdly the 2000s, and suddenly it's our generation. So I was kind of interested to sort of explore, just from a personal perspective, sort of the Cold War period. So I was reading a lot of books around it, and so read it up on it from a great book out there by Katja Hoyer, who coincidentally eventually came onto the project as our lead historical and technical advisor. And Katja wrote a book called Beyond the Wall, and that sort of explores, because there's so much literature out there that sort of focuses on, behind the Iron Curtain, East Germany, and that sort of civilization, I suppose, and that experiment. But so much of it is kind of from that sort of Western perspective. And so Katja brought a sort of East German perspective on that time period. And so I was really fascinated by that. And then I thought there's something here that it felt like nothing really been brought to screen or brought to life telling one of these stories. So it kind of came at it from that angle, and the rest really is history. So did a bit of research, landed on Chris's story. I think there's always something tragic about someone doing the last of something. I don't know if you've ever watched the film, the recent film, name escapes me off the top of my head, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah.
And it's the German production version of it. And obviously the protagonist in that actor escapes off the top of my head, but he, following his story, he becomes the last person to eventually be shot in the trenches, and that's absolutely devastating. Just before the armistice is signed.
Held back for an hour or two.
Exactly, yeah. Imagine. So I kind of came at it from that perspective and sort of wondered, who was the last person? Because you sort of hear about people being shot and killed and stuff at the Berlin Wall. Who was the last person? And we sort of landed on Chris's story from that perspective, and then, as I say, the rest is history. Yeah.
So once you got that story, what's the whole sort of production like? Because filmmaking is not cheap, and also you got to get the right people with you and the actors and everything else. I think a lot of people wouldn't understand what goes into that from the level that you're operating in, because although you're still small, it's not that small.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's an expensive endeavor. So yeah, I think we ended up having 148 cast and crew. So just to put it into perspective, we ended up, obviously it's a short film, 25 minutes long, but we spent 2 years of our lives collectively at different stages, obviously from pre to post, sort of working on it. 148 people fed into it at any one point. We ended up having to sort of put together a sizable budget. Obviously, recreating elements of the Berlin Wall's death strip isn't a cheap process. Let's put it like that. So yeah, it was kind of there was a lot that fed into it. Huge learning curve. I had recently, before embarking on this project, I had written, directed, and then shot, I should say, a short film, but it was a much smaller scale, only 15 minutes long. And a much smaller budget, fraction of the price to cost it in total. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into filmmaking, and you're right. It's a kind of people kind of gloss over that element, but there's so many kind of moving parts there for sure.
So, how do you even do that? Because people who don't know anything about filmmaking will sort of assume that you've either got someone very rich behind you, or you're making a lot of money from it, and I'm sure that's
neither
not
is
the case.
Sadly correct. Yeah, sadly.
So how do you piece that together?
So I'll be candid. I mean, I should probably get it in quite early. So Guernsey Arts as a force locally have been absolutely essential. I think without them, we wouldn't have the kind of burgeoning local film industry, dare I say, but certainly film scene that we've seen over the last maybe sort of half a decade or so now, with a few various feature, but also several short film productions coming to the fore. So they were absolutely critical to sort of moving the dial and sort of getting us the early sort of seed funding, I guess it would be the kind of industry term for it. And from there, we managed to sort of leverage that. They put us into contact with a few sort of private film supporters locally, who very kindly came on board and sort of offered wrote a few more checks, to put it bluntly. And then from there, we sort of had the kind of fully fleshed, I guess. We'd obviously, by this point, we'd gone through the motions of sort of writing the script, gone through several iterations, sort of 28, 30 drafts, I think it ended up being, storyboarded it, then sort of pitched it as an idea to some of the more sort of private sponsor side, those private individuals. And then we went out to the DDR Museum in Berlin, who kind of came along and eventually kind of put up the lion's share, it's probably fair to say. And with that, actually, there obviously came a whole host of sort of other tacit, tangible benefits. They've got the biggest collection of East German elements, objects, household items in the world. So they obviously were able to ship some of that to the island for the production. So they were incredibly supportive on the beyond the financial means, if you like, as well. Yeah. I guess that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying there was so many important elements, and trying to pull those strings to get the financing right was definitely, I think it's definitely the hardest part. But Guernsey Arts were critical in moving the needle, and then once we got that, it was it's kind of snowballed in a way. So we maybe we're lucky from that perspective. Yeah.
Speaking to a producer once who said making any film, getting it to the end is just like a constant battle of being pulled this way and that way, and you're trying to fight every which way, whether it be like someone trying to take you down a different direction, for costumes to locations to finances or whatever. Yeah. So just to get it across the line is a success in the end.
I think that's absolutely right. I can't remember. I think it might be the similar quote, but there is a quote that says sort of making a film and completing the film is a miracle in itself, because there's so many moving parts. There's 1,000, probably 1,000,000 ways it can go wrong, and probably one way it can go right type thing. So in a similar vein, yeah.
So, and then that probably leads us to awards, successes. So tell us about, I don't know if I'm going to say the acronym correctly. Is it BIFA?
BIFA, yeah. BIFA, yeah.
So tell us about BIFA. Yeah. Most people won't know what that is, and then what you've got for it.
Yeah, so if you're a film fan or filmmaker or just a general film nerd, maybe, you probably will know the BIFAs, so the British Independent Film Awards. So they're a yearly sort of film awards ceremony in the UK. I think beyond the BAFTAs, which most people will recognise, you've got the Oscars, the BAFTAs. I guess the BAFTAs is the British Oscars, isn't it? Yeah. And beyond the BAFTAs, or second to the BAFTAs, the BIFAs are probably the second biggest awards ceremony in the UK. So yeah, fortunately we managed to, we kind of finished up production last year, kind of got the film in the can by kind of early this year. And then we sort of, started trying to get it onto the festival circuit, so seeing where it can go. And so as part of that, one of our early festivals we were accepted into was the Sunderland Shorts Film Festival, which is BIFA qualifying. And the way the BIFAs work is, in order to qualify to the BIFAs, you need to sort of get into, I think it's, they've got a category A and B list, and you've got to get onto sort of at least one of the category A lists, which is your Sundances, your Venices, your Cannes, and those big global festivals that everyone will know and recognise. And then the sort of B list that's sort of the sort of regional UK festivals that are very respectable. So Sunderland, Sunderland Shorts, Worcester, Cambridge, Rain Dance, Manchester Film Festival. Those ones that are sort of respectable but sort of contained to the UK. So long story short, once we'd premiered at Sunderland, we then the project snowballed. We got into a few more festivals within the UK, but also internationally. So we're actually off to Toronto International Nollywood Film Festival in September, which is very exciting because that's Canadian Screen Award qualifying. And then the film will be having its Hollywood premiere in late August, so later this month. And so we've got a few things flying around. And then it kind of recently came in that we got into Worcester, which is also BIFA qualifying. So it kind of, I guess, it kind of like as all things do with film, it seems, kind of snowballed. And then with Worcester, that came, because it's BIFA qualifying, came with the film itself becoming BIFA qualifying. So we are now in a position where the film is eligible to eventually get onto the shortlist for the 2025 BIFAs, because it's kind of on the long list, but it needs to go through a jury before it gets kind of filtered down and sort of weeded out. So yeah.
And why is this significant in terms of like your journey for this individual film, but also I guess you guys longer term as well?
I suppose I guess there's two answers in a way. For the film, it's obviously there's that international recognition. So the film itself is, if it gets the sort of the BIFA or the BIFA stamp of approval, I suppose, then it's hopefully regarded as a fairly well put together film and a well crafted piece of film work. So that there's that sort of element of sort of, wow, we've sort of done it and crossed that sort of that Rubicon. I guess from a Guernsey perspective, we understand it. We're fairly certain at this point. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm 99% sure that it's a Guernsey film first. So there's the added element that it feels like we're sort of knocking down walls a bit here. We've touched on it already, but the Guernsey film scene is really taking off, or has been.
Certainly for a locally produced film, I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, it feels like we're taking that next step. It's if we can do this, where do we go next? And that's the exciting bit. Yeah.
And does that help, like, for the future with like future funding and like other projects that you might want to do?
That's a great question. It remains to be seen, I guess. I suppose if you can sort of show that your previous film project is BIFA qualifying, then in a sense that maybe it is a bit of a stamp of approval for some quarters, and therefore, hopefully would release funding. I know that some local film makers and producers are sort of have eyed up trying to get sort of BFI funding, very, very, very competitive. So hopefully an accreditation like that to our respective CVs for those who are involved in the producing team especially, releasing that BFI funding for a Guernsey project is maybe slightly more in grasp now.
And I guess moving that on, where does that leave? Where's Guernsey in this? Or where is the Guernsey, if you like, filmmaking community?
Yes,
because it's been hard for anyone who wanted to do it here. There's not really other than a little bit of commercial work, there's not a huge scene here. So, but you guys and others have been building that up over the last few years, which is great.
Yeah.
So where does that go, or does it not? Is it destined to be like as it is, and you hope to then go further afield? Or, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it remains to be seen. I guess it's tricky to sort of predict, I guess, where the future lies. I think, as you say, it's certainly. So it feels like sort of post-COVID. I know there's always been filmmaking. I know we talked about that just before we kind of came on air about, there's always been a bit of a film scene here. I think Guernsey's a very creative place, and actually I think that extends to most sort of facets and interest areas, whether it's sport and the island games.
It has to be, doesn't it? Because we have to survive somehow. So we
exactly
have to be multi-skilled in some way.
100%. So when it feels like if Guernsey was a small town in the UK, for some reason, something tells me we wouldn't be punching quite above the weight that we do.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's something in the water, or something about the fact that we're small and contained and literally 25 square miles. That means when it comes to sport, when it comes to business, when it comes to whatever it is, we really do. We do punch above our weight. I think the phrase just stands on its own. So I think when it comes to filmmaking, I think that stands. And I think, certainly it's always been there, but maybe the support hasn't always been there, whether it's the tax incentives and the kind of economic environment maybe. And I'm not there, when I say that, I'm not talking about sort of states putting up taxpayer money to fund the stuff, because I think that's a whole different conversation. But I think certainly maybe the tax environment and the incentive environment economically hasn't been there. Whereas you look to the Isle of Man, you look to Northern Ireland, and they've got sort of a clear business environment laid out by the local government or whatever it is to facilitate filmmaking. So that maybe hasn't been there, and that's kind of been a bit of a blocker. But that said, as you say, over the last half a decade, certainly since 2020, around COVID, it's really, really taken off. You've got Alex Bates and White Rock Productions. You've got Lars Janssen with Guernsey Filmworks. You've got my brother Cameron Ashplant with Across the Channel Productions, and myself and the team at Golden Gate Films. So there's a lot of and there's others I've failed to mention, but there's so much going on. It's hard to keep track of. So I think there's certainly something in the water and something's going right. I think the next step, if Guernsey is serious about maybe capturing and bottling this and extending the reach here, it does feel like the time is ripe for a sort of Guernsey Film Institute sort of type organisation to set up and work with government to sort of, let's be serious and sort of see how we can move the dial on this now. Yeah.
So a lot of this comes down in the end to money, doesn't it? And can Guernsey make money out of it as Guernsey PLC?
Yeah.
Can individuals or finance companies make money by backing it?
Yeah.
But something's got to unlock it, hasn't it? And I don't know what the answer is, but it feels like they almost need the business end of that, right? To then feed the creative end. But I don't know if you've got that far in your thinking or what have you. But I don't know what that next stage is, because you guys have got to a really good stage where you are, but then to take things to a high level needs more, doesn't it?
It does certainly come down to financing. I think it is a bit chicken and egg. Which way do you flip the script? Do you say we need that risk capital to be put up to then have government say, this is commercially viable, therefore let's ease the tax burden? Because at the moment, for example, there's no tax break. And so we're potentially targeting, there's potentially government tax targeting a non-industry, if you know what I mean.
Exactly,
so do we need to say, look, let's actually create at least some sort of sandbox environment where people can come in and play in a way that they know they're not going to then get taxed. Not that Guernsey, is a high tax jurisdiction, but there would be tax there within the current tax regimes and stuff for a prospective industry that, as I say, doesn't exist. So, it does feel like. And I know, as I say, there's talk of a Guernsey Film Institute, which is hopefully going to be launching soon, and there's been early conversations about that. But it does feel like maybe in order to have a business case and have a potential venture capital fund or a private equity fund or any whatever kind of risk capital it is, that institution needs to see that the state is keen to support that. Because if they think the state, for 1 minute, is going to come down and tax and not be supportive, why wouldn't they go to a Northern Ireland or an Isle of Man or whatever it is? And I think that there's the economic side is absolutely critical to get right, because without it, you're not going to have the people making the money. Investors aren't going to put cash up, so to speak. But there is an argument to be said that there is an offering in Guernsey unlike any other. And I think if you look at, and I know this argument's been made before, but if you look at the island as a film, literally the geography of the island, if you go to Grand Rock and the headland around there, that's a completely different environment to the south coast. The centre of the island's got rolling fields. Within 25 square miles, Guernsey's got a heck of a lot going on geographically. That is actually quite, if you speak to location scouts and those types of people in the industry, that's very appealing. Because if you shoot in the UK and you want to find some sort of desert desert type landscape, you're going to be hard pressed to find that. You might find it on the south coast of Wales, but that's a heck of a drive from London. So there's an argument to be said that actually we are quite nimble, very nimble as an island, and have a huge offering in terms of the landscape versatility. So when you think about that, that's appealing for location scouts. They're pitching the island to producers. The producers then are then thinking, with the business team, well, is there the tax environment? Is that right? So it feels like if we get that right, and as I say, I'm really mindful that we're not. I think most Guernsey filmmakers would stress that we're not looking for taxpayer money to be put up for projects, because I think that's absurd. I think there's much more important things for tax money to be spent on. But it does feel like the business environment, which is in the control of government, can be tweaked and amended to, and we don't have to go into the weeds on it, but to slightly open up the industry. And when those location scouts come here, and when they are sort of, when they do have their eyes opened to the versatility island, they can then say to the producers, what do you think? Producers look at the business case, it's ready to go. And actually suddenly we're much more competitive, and we can rival the likes of the Isle of Man, which have seen film making really take off in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, and as I say, Northern Ireland as well. So.
Do you think the island's infrastructure can cope with, like, I know we're talking different levels, but I think sometimes when we talk about films, we always think about like the biggest budget, big thing, but we don't always have to be at that level. Like, I know that, like, obviously when there's a lot of equipment involved, often, like, and big, quite a lot that people wouldn't necessarily think about. But if you're going to do a town scene, you might have to close half a town down in order to actually shoot it. Yeah. Do you think Guernsey would be receptive to that, or do you think the fact that we moan when one road is closed might actually be to detriment? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way of winning that battle. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can't convince everyone, right? I mean, everyone's got different views, and everyone's very welcome to their views on the whole discussion. My take would be, again, back to the business case. I know that, and I think you're right, first of all, to caveat that by saying that, when we think about film production, people automatically go to the sort of the big studio blockbuster type films. The reality is the feature film level productions that probably would be enticed to come to Guernsey are going to be sort of more high level independent films, so indie film. But maybe, something like an A24 type thing that's going to shoot a small-ish, medium-sized thriller film or something like that here. It's not going to be your Marvel type. I mean, I doubt it anyway. So I think it's probably worth caveating and kind of putting that explainer into the argument first. But I think on whether things can cope, I guess it's all chicken and egg, isn't it? So what do you do first? If we want to sort of diversify the economy, which we've heard a lot about, and obviously, the industry, the economy, is very much geared towards finance, and the finance industry is the driver of the wider economy. I think that there's no doubt about it. But whenever you talk to politicians, and we've obviously had a recent election, they seem to sort of stress the importance of diversifying the economy, and it does feel like a tangible means of doing that, and it's far from the kind of traditional business route of finance. It's a creative outlet. So actually, the two can feed each other, can't they?
But the thing, exactly. And so it does feel like it's an outlet that industry or an industry that could be at least nurtured by with the right government environment to kind of flourish more. I guess whether things can cope, whether the airport can cope, whether we've got enough hotels, I don't know. It's all chicken and egg, isn't it? I guess it's demand and supply. Unless there's demand, supply will never be filled. So maybe if there's demand for location scouts and film producers and the team and a production team to come to the island with their kit or rent out local kits, then suddenly maybe there's a need for hotels, and hotels, suddenly we've got hotels open maybe. I don't know, maybe it's a bit far-fetched, but you know what I mean? There's a kind of, you've got to start somewhere.
Exactly, yeah.
So I get the argument that there's a lot of pressure maybe on local industry, but yeah, it's a bit chicken and egg.
It's an interesting debate, I'm sure not what we're going to actually solve here.
No, I doubt it. I doubt it.
But there's definitely merit in it, I can see that. Probably coming back to your film.
Yes, yeah.
Where do you go from here? How are people going to see it?
Yeah, so we're as I say, we're kind of on the festival circuit. So the film is kind of here, there, and everywhere internationally. So if you find yourself in Berlin on the 2nd of October, we'll be in Berlin. But for local audiences who are keen to see it, we are on. So the local, I guess, bring the film home because it's a Guernsey film. It's going to be screened at the Princess Royal Centre for the Performing Arts, so the Performing Arts Centre, on the 12th of September, Friday the 12th of September. So tickets can be bought at what used to be Guernsey Tickets, but it's now sort of not Guernsey Tickets. If anyone can't find the link, they can email me at brandon@goldengoatfilms.co.uk. And yeah, so we're looking forward to bringing it home, and we would love to have local film fans, filmmakers, and everyone else down there for sure.
Great. Well, best of luck with that. I hope it goes really well with that performance, with the awards and the festivals and everything else you've got.
Thank you.
Out. I don't know how you have a main job, but yeah, good luck with it all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.